Okay, everybody, welcome back to Mild Mannered Supermen. I wanted to just tell you to chill out. Yeah, we're busy dads here, so we need some time away every once in a while. I know it's been a hot minute since we dropped the last episode, but this one is going to be worth the wait. Jake, I'm pretty excited tonight. We're going to kind of close out a trick of the tail. There's 2 tracks that we haven't covered yet, so we're going to cover both of those tonight, Squonk and Los Endos. And then I have a special surprise for you that I think you're going to like as we get a little bit later into tonight's very hip and cool podcast.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to see what that is. Well, I don't know, honestly.
Wow. That's true. That's true.
It's hard to trust your brother sometimes, but no,
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to
brotherly love. Brotherly
yes.
love.
No, we'll see what that is. But yeah, I've been excited about this one. I think we kind of saved no pun intended here to Los Endos. For good reason. One is, Squonk, right? Squonk is
Squonk.
Squonk.
It's
Squonk. So what? It's a crazy song. This is where Phil Collins really kind of breaks free of the pan, and we start to see really glimpses, not more than glimpses, a pretty decent look at what Genesis is going to become with Phil Collins on lead. But beyond that, the musicianship, I mean, if it's not your favorite song on the album, I get that. But if it is, you're in good company.
Yeah, it's one that I actually, in my Genesis journey, I was very much more into Los Endos first as part of this album. So what I did essentially was created playlists to listen to where I picked 2 or 3 songs from each album and just put them on my playlist, and I would go on my walks or jogs, and Los Endos was on one of those, and so I got very familiar with that track. And then one day, for whatever reason, I put on Squonk, and I was like, oh, I've heard this before. And I think, in tonight's episode, I think it's really going to be telling how Los Endos just brilliantly ties a bow, not only on the entire Trick of the Tail album, but it dips back into some Genesis history as well. What I wanted to say about Squonk too is just how important it was for Phil Collins. Squonk was a song written by Banks and Rutherford. Rutherford wrote the lyrics, and they couldn't figure out, exactly what the future state was going to be with their lead singer. And this was the song that they had the last round of auditions for. I mean, they had been through round after round after round of auditions with singers, and they got into kind of the final rounds. They let one poor gentleman come in and take a shot at Squonk, and he couldn't quite pull it off. And so Phil Collins gave it a go, and the rest is basically Genesis history. So I'm prepared to kind of jump into that, get into the song, talk about Los Endos, and then obviously kind of set you up for your little surprise at the end. Let's just talk a little bit about what Squonk's all about, because as much as this is a song that means a lot in the historical archives of Genesis, with Phil Collins really knocking out of the park in the studio with his vocal performance, you can, there is an element to this song that is also tied back to their desire to put something on an album that was a little bit different. And to them, this was essentially a Led Zeppelin song. I've got a quote here that I find really interesting from Phil Collins. He says, that was our Zeppelin kind of song, kind of a bit of Kashmir, a bit of When the Levee Breaks. When you listen to it, it doesn't sound like that, but that's what it was meant to be, with the heavy guitar chords and my John Bonham hat on. So I just always find that really interesting, especially, the way the song starts, you can kind of get that vibe. But then for any like hardcore Led Zeppelin fans that would hear him make that comparison, as soon as like Tony Banks comes in on the high pitched keyboards, it becomes a very like truly prog rock, Genesis song. But just the fact that they had Led Zeppelin in their heads, and the only other time Zeppelin's come up on this podcast is Fly on the Windshield, because they also compared that song to them trying to channel their inner John Bonham. But I just wanted to get your take on that. Like, did you know that they had that quote out there, that they were thinking that? Does it resonate with you when you hear that?
No, that's news to me. But I never put anything past you, Jarrett. Nothing slips through the cracks on your research.
We took a week off, so like we took a whole week where I could get ready for this. So
I got you. So you're coming out swinging. Yeah. No, it's good. I love it. I do think, actually what's funny to me is what really stands out in my head is Phil Collins kind of comparing himself to John Bonham. He'd get an opportunity several years later to actually fill John Bonham's shoes, right? At Live Aid. He performs with Led Zeppelin, right? And it doesn't go so great.
It wasn't his fault. It was not his fault. It wasn't
his fault, but don't ask Jimmy Page that question.
Yeah. Well, Jimmy Page was drooling on stage, so.
Right.
And
I'm not sure he's the best judge of how that performance went.
Yeah.
No, Phil was pretty solid on that, but that is funny. Kind of jumps out. And I guess I could hear that a little bit, that maybe there's a little influence in there. I think there's always a little bit of keeping up with the Joneses in the pop music world, and Led Zeppelin is certainly huge at this point in history. So it's kind of natural for you to or for the lads to kind of start saying, well, this is sort of our Led Zeppelin track, or that was the influence, or sort of what we had in mind, right?
Yeah.
That's probably what they were just listening to,
I think it was less about, sounding like Zeppelin and just trying to be innovative on the drums. The way this song starts is certainly not only innovative on the drums, but like, if you don't like bass pedals, then get out, because this is, it hits hard.
Yes, it does. No, and you're right. And I think you're right to call out that, this is, really doesn't sound anything like a Led Zeppelin song. So when you kind of scratch your head and say, what elements of this are there? It's the heavy feel, right? This track is significantly heavier than, really, I think, your average Genesis song of this era. And really just among drummers, it stands out as one of those big drum songs. Phil's not shy with the toms on this. Lots of big tom fills, and maybe a little foreshadowing of the direction he's heading, because we all know some Phil Collins songs that are best known for their tom fills. There's a couple of
100%.
epic ones. I think, this is one of those things that it would be hard to find any, unless you really get musical about this and start doing kind of direct comparisons to maybe quotes or tone, or some aspect of a particular fill. But for the most part, this is just an influence. It's just the sort of thing that comes into the Genesis filter as creative input and comes out as something completely, new. But when you think about what you know about Genesis and the sound of Genesis, this song does kind of stand out, right? It's a little unique, and if they say it comes from Led Zeppelin, then I'm willing to believe that.
Well, I mean, so we've covered the groove, and what the inspiration for the groove was, but then and we've covered the fact that the vocal performance is a monumental, important part of Genesis history, and we'll play some audio on just to kind of validate our point on that. But like, what the heck is a squonk? What are these lyrics about?
Yeah, it's fun. This is an old lumberjack tall tale. There are if you cast yourself back to the 19th century, lumber camps in the Ohio River Valley, northern Pennsylvania, and western New York, the wilderness, as it were. These gents would take in a hearty draft in the evening and sit around the fire and tell stories. And some of the things they would talk about were mythical creatures, right? All of the various things, just like sailors will talk about mermaids and sea monsters and that sort of thing. These are all the things that the lumberjacks, the old timers, had seen in the woods over the years, right? So the squonk is actually documented in a book.
William T. Cox, 1910 book, The Fearsome Creatures of the Lumberwoods. Are we on the same page?
We are, yes. 1910, Fearsome Creatures of the Lumberwoods, which of course makes you think of the J.K. Rowling era, right? It's I wonder where she could get that idea.
Yeah. What was it? The mythical creatures, mythical beasts, something like that. Yeah,
or mythical, and where to find them?
Yeah,
apparently in the lumber woods. That's where you find the squonk. The squonk is famously ugly. It is an ugly beast. It is a shy beast, and it's also painfully self-aware. So it spends most of its days terribly upset and depressed about its own appearance. It's covered in warts. It's got loose skin and, blemishes, and it's just kind of hairy and nasty.
Bro, like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it hides and it cries. These are its two primary social attributes. So it's a lovely.
Let's write a song about it. Only Mike Rutherford would come up with these lyrics.
Right. So musically, it's kind of important, I think, because it's a terribly depressed beast, and I think we get some of that. Right. There's maybe some anger involved. This is part of the complexity of the lyrical material here. Is exactly what are we driving at with the squonk. But musically, we do kind of follow a bit of the mythology. And I'll say, one of the biggest attributes of the squonk when hunted, since it is a creature in the woods, is that if it's ever cornered or captured, trapped, it dissolves. But it dissolves into tears. Right, so it just becomes tears, which is kind of crazy.
So sad. It's so sad.
It really is, and poetic, at the same time.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see what would draw, a songwriter, particularly these weirdos, to this material.
Yeah.
How they found it, I'm not sure. You'd have to assume that they, were on an American tour at some point recently and heard about this or visited a museum or something. Maybe they checked out a
Well, they
local
were
library.
smart guys. We've covered how smart they were in their literary findings, but there were more stories in the late 50s and the late 60s coming out of, some of them came out of South America. There was a book of imaginary beings out of Argentina that was in 1969. In 57, there was a handbook of fantastic zoology that was all in Spanish. So there may have been something happening at that time that just brought this into the forefront of kind of the consciousness. But yeah, for sure, like the first original mention of this mythical beast, if you will, is from that 1910 Creatures of the Lumberwoods book.
By William T. Cox.
There's other nursery rhymes, I guess, referenced in this song that I just find really interesting. So Humpty Dumpty references, and then there's some Snow White references, and so there's a bit of this is one that you can listen to multiple times and take away a few things. As I was looking into it a little bit further and just seeing what the interwebs had to say about it, of course, you don't have to go far to find people who make claims about maybe this is, like we covered Madman Moon and how maybe there's Tony Banks conveying some interpersonal dialogue around Peter Gabriel leaving the band, but some of the interwebs seem to point to maybe this is Mike Rutherford's chance to do the same thing, especially with lyrics like he's a shy one, he's a sly one, he's scared to be left all on his own. Kind of echoes both the myth of the Squonk story, but also kind of their real life situation. I have never listened to it that way. I just wanted to mention it in case there are listeners here who think that Squonk is somehow a Mike Rutherford diss track. But
I'm glad you said that, because I actually had kind of, a similar interpretation, but more from a Phil Collins perspective, right? I felt like, you told the story that this was the audition piece, which seems unfair. But the audition piece for several of the new singers, and Phil would actually sing it to kind of give them an idea of what they were looking for, right?
yeah, the guide vocal. Yeah.
And ultimately, I feel like, forcing Phil Collins into the spotlight as the lead singer, this song can be interpreted as ultimately about him, right? I mean, he's on record saying he doesn't want to come out from behind the drum set, that he's kind of happy back there, he's shy, he's the introvert, he's got this shield between him and the audience, right? And that's kind of fading away. So in my mind, he's the Squonk.
I love that, dude. I love that. This is so fun. I'm so excited. I have like goosebumps. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this episode. So
yeah, and the to double down on that, the percussion performance, the drum performance on this track is insane, right? I mean, it's really Phil at his height. So we're getting just two fantastic performances from Phil Collins, and maybe there's something to that it's
all the more reason not to want to come out from behind the drum kit,
right?
Like
yeah,
he loved this groove. So let's listen to him from his I want to say 2016 autobiography, where he gets into kind of this, and we've done this before. We've played some clips of Phil Collins, and then I'm probably just going to start playing the song and we can talk through it.
We auditioned for 5 or 6 weeks. We've seen about 30 guys. It's starting to become tedious. That said, we finally agreed to let one vocalist pass the front door. Mick Strickland is a bit better than the rest, and we ask him into Trident to have a crack. We give him Squonk to sing. The very first line of that vocal is a bitch. Like father, like son. We don't ask his key or his range. We just give it to him. Take it away. Poor guy. It's not
Take it
remotely
away.
his key. We have to say thank you and goodbye. Looking back, I feel bad for Mick. I've been that soldier that has to sing the song in the key I'm given. In those days, though, we didn't even consider that an issue. But Squonk is new, and it's a groove I like. More pertinently, right now, we've no other option, nothing left to lose, and there are studio hours racking up. So I say, how about I have a go? And the rest of the guys shrug, might as well. Deep inside, I know I can do this, but actually singing it? That's another thing entirely. Sometimes your brain says yes, but your voice screams no. But I have a go, even if Mike's lyrics do have me guessing. Mike and Tony later tell me it's like one of those cartoon light bulb moments. They look at each other in the control room and their eyebrows say it all. By George, I think he's got it. Looking back, it was a defining moment for me. The studio environment was great, allowing us to hammer away at it until the vocals worked and the music clicked. I still didn't want to go out front and sing, mind. And yet, we're still dazed and confused. The guy we thought might finally manage the vocals has proved a bust. And now the drummer's had a pop and it doesn't sound bad. But over the whole album, is that wise? We try a few takes, finesse it, come back in the next morning, have another listen and all agree. It still sounds good. I'm very unsure. But could it be that we might just have found a singer, albeit in a manner reminiscent of finding a fiver down the back of the couch?
I love that, just that idea of recording it, sleeping, and then coming in the next morning and re-listening. Apparently that's what Phil Collins and Philip Bailey did. Oh, Easy Lover.
Easy Lover, yeah.
And they came in the next morning and they were like, oh, that was actually really good. We were just riffing the night before.
Yeah, it's a pretty important thing to do from time to time, is to put a little space between you and your performance. I don't know. Some people would argue that even overnight is a little quick, but
yeah. When you're paying for it, it makes a big difference.
Right. When you're in the studio, that time is not cheap, particularly at this point in history, right? So anything you lay down is expensive. If you're not finding your way, then adds up quick.
Let's listen to Squonk. As soon as I push play, like it just gets going. So let's get going. Bass pedal.
Yeah, it's visceral. You can feel it in your bones.
And by the way, on the album, this is right after Entangled, right? So, I mean, it just kicks in out of nowhere.
There is that, it's the ARP soloist, but it has a very fine oboe double reed sound. And there's Tony Banks kind of summoning the spirit of Peter Gabriel in his oboe.
Yeah. I like that he said that he was kind of miffed by Mike Rutherford's lyrics, because it does take a while to kind of settle into the storytelling of this song. There's the Humpty Dumpty reference, right? All the king's horses, all the king's men.
And the song is a little strange because there's lots of little kind of offbeat references to fairy tales and Mother Goose type stuff in here. So there's a little bit of a mixed bag of the mythical beasts. I guess Humpty Dumpty counts as a mythical beast.
Sure.
He's an Eggman.
Is he though, Jake? Is he an Eggman? Or were we raised to believe he was an Eggman?
This is true. It's never explicitly stated, is it?
It doesn't.
you understand when you hear this part here what he means, right? That it takes such a unique voice to hit this, and one that has the background of the band. And you can't just go on the street and find somebody that can bring the soul to this type of song that it requires. So Phil just has that naturally.
And there he was all along, like he said, a fiver down the couch cushions.
Big, almost hook from Tony Banks there on the Hammond organ.
I love that. I don't know what the right musical term is, but how that entire part just kind of goes down the scale, and like his voice, what he's saying, the keyboards just kind of follow him down the scale. I just think it's beautiful.
And funny you should mention that. It's one of the musical traits of this song that's kind of noteworthy. That is a little bit of a descending, almost a pentatonic descending line there, and the feel summons a little bit of the folk aspect that this song is about, right? So particularly to choose the pentatonic, that's a North American folk staple in the form of the blues, right? So I think it's just a clever little nod right there to the folklore nature of the song.
We didn't talk about the role of the hunter, but this hunter, ultimately figures out a way to trick the Squonk, and is really proud of his efforts to get the Squonk into a bag. Here he's saying, "I got you, I got you," and then just the hubris side of things, where this hunter discovers that, he thinks he's going to have all this glory from catching this beast, but he just obviously opens up the sack, and it's just a pool of tears.
It's full of tears.
Just that hunter is left in absolute ruin, and must be feeling, quite insufficient at this point. I think that's an important part of the story, and an important character of the story that we haven't touched on.
Yeah, it's wise to study the ways of one's prey. If you're going to hunt a Squonk, you should know what happens when you catch a Squonk.
Complete change in the song here. Like, just beautiful, like, for no reason other than to be awesome.
Well, I think this really represents that dissolving of the Squonk to some extent. It's that change. And, the choosing to go to a major key there is an interesting choice, right? The Squonk is dissolved, but the major key would indicate that his suffering, is ultimately at an end. So, to have that kind of bright change at the end when he dissolves into tears is just a tasty little duality that I think is typical of these sharp guys,
Yeah. That's... I've not listened to that last little bit that way before, but I probably will never not think of that now. So thanks for that. In a good way. Moving on to Los Endos. Phil Collins, again, had a lot to do with this song. He was active with Brand X. He is quoted as saying that he kind of styled the Los Endos after a Santana groove that he liked, which is interesting. This track goes on to be, just an immensely important part of their stage show for the rest of Genesis history. It is usually preceded by a drum duo, very famously by Phil Collins and Chester Thompson, and then just moving directly from the drum duo into Los Endos is like the climax of the Genesis show. Mm-hmm. And it goes on to be that for just quite some time. And there was parts of me that was like, hey, maybe I should play one of the live versions of Los Endos on the podcast when we talk about it, but I couldn't find one that would be better than any of the others in certain areas versus others. My favorite is, and I might get a little bit of hate for this, but like my favorite is when they did the 4 nights at Wembley on the Invisible Touch tour. If you listen to Los Endos on that from that concert, it is very moving. But the album version I think is just so perfect. So we're going to listen to that. Before we do that though, do you have any initial thoughts or feelings on Los Endos?
Yeah, this has been a trend for Genesis, kind of a summation piece at the end of their song. This comes from, we've talked about Tony Banks and his schmaltzy music hall, love of the music hall. This is a music hall thing, right? You always end a review with a summation of the review, right? So for me, this is just Tony Banks has got to have his hand in this, but it's a very formal, or maybe informal approach, and it's something that we're going to see the band really lean into, right? When we get to Duke and kind of some of the other albums. It's just a nice way to close the album out by reviewing the musical themes that we've visited over the previous hour, or however long the album runs. I would agree that, they do tend to settle in on Los Endos as just a nice way to end pretty much all future, future concerts. So, this is, in a way, ironically, also Los Endos in terms of coming up with new ways to end gigs. But one of the little things that jumps out, and it's very, very difficult to hear. As a matter of fact, it's kind of hard to pinpoint the exact moment this occurs. But I think a lot of people interpret this song as a kind of a quiet nod or a farewell to Peter Gabriel, right? Particularly the little vocal sample that you hear towards the end. I believe Phil Collins says something along the lines of "There's an angel standing in the sun." Right?
That's correct.
A nice little throwback to "Supper's Ready."
That's correct.
And that's not in there for no reason. So, in our digital world, you can confirm that it is actually there. So,
it's in there twice. It's in there twice.
Yeah.
It's as the song is fading out. There's a second line from "Supper's Ready," and then the repeating line of the angel standing in the light. And actually, if you go back to our Supper's Ready podcast, we actually played a little bit of Los Endos, like just to like. So I called it forward then, but now we're calling it back.
Yeah, no, that was clever. I see what you did there.
Yeah, I think it's meaningful. It's special. It's meaningful. So whatever we have to say about Squonk or Madman Moon, like, these guys were all friends. I mean, they were childhood friends. They went on to go to each other's weddings. I think there may be some godfathering of children between them as well. I mean, they were just dear friends. And so whatever the media wants to make of any kind of falling out, or any kind of broken relationships, it's just the way dudes operate,
Right.
And, I mean, I've got friends that I could go 10 years without talking to, and then as soon as we talk, it's like no time has ever passed, and I'm assuming that's what these guys are like. So I love that you just called that out, and that they gave him that tribute on the way out here with Los Endos. So to your point, not only are we going to close out A Trick of the Tail, but we're doing some callbacks to Foxtrot and the entire Peter Gabriel-era. So we're going to be listening for themes from A Trick of the Tail. So Dance on a Volcano is going to make an appearance here. Squonk is certainly going to make an appearance here. Entangled and our favorite Mellotron choir will make an appearance in Los Endos. But here's the part where I think you can really kind of get the feeling of like a Santana or a Brand X vibe that Phil Collins is laying down.
Yeah, 100%. This is classic Santana / Brand X. It's that jazz fusion, right? This is big in the acid jazz world. The vibe that he's laying down here. So you get this with a lot of your acid jazz projects in the mid-70s. Speaking of, Sonny Rollins passed away yesterday. So rest in peace, Sonny Rollins, a great jazz tenor sax player, one of my idols.
Aww. I'm sorry for your loss.
He was 95, so, it was a little not unexpected.
We haven't mentioned Steve Hackett tonight, but in that jazz fusion intro, there was quite a bit of Steve Hackett influence in there.
That's true, yeah.
And that's what I love about Hackett, is that he's just this atmosphere creator. He doesn't have to be the lead guy at all times. Certainly he had some itches that needed to be scratched, but his contributions here are not unnoticed.
They may be subtle, but they're not subtle. Yeah, you're absolutely right. He's a big part of the vibe that we get, and his work with the volume pedal on this track is really great. Does all that swell work in the intro, and then here,
when
just this pure multimeter, mix meter, and Phil just throwing down.
When they hired Daryl Sturmer to be the lead guitarist for the live shows, Sturmer was learning all the parts, and he was blown away at how many of the parts that he assumed were keyboard parts were actually Steve Hackett guitar parts. Speaking of. So we're going to end the album the way we came in. Here's the Dance on the Volcano. The Mellotron from Entangled is coming in hard right there as well.
Yeah. Look at you calling out the Mellotron.
I'm getting it. I'm getting it. I was listening to like Steve Hackett solo stuff, and I could hear the Mellotron. Like, I've been listening to all this other prog stuff, and I can hear it. And I'm like, oh, that's definitely a Mellotron. Whereas 3 months ago, I would have assumed they had a choir in the studio, like singing these songs.
Right.
The Squonk we tried.
This is such a just a great vibe here. And that little descending line, that's the ARP soloist.
The tears.
And it's, I think, you know, Tony's in love with this instrument. We're going to hear this instrument for another decade, right? We clearly hear it all the way through the Invisible Touch album. So this really, to me, is the birth of modern Genesis, right? What they're going to become. And no offense to Steve Hackett. I mean, he obviously plays a huge part here, but the sound is complete, you know, and with you know, negatively maybe without him.
There's the angel standing in the sun line there. Wanted to hear that. Yeah. Wow. I mean, from start to finish, I mean, there's just nothing not to love about A Trick of the Tail. And what a statement piece. I mean, coming off of The Lamb, and then to lose someone as important as Peter Gabriel, and to be able to put together this just collection of songs that mean a lot to a lot of people. I mean, I just think that there's and all the things that it says about who they are going to become as a band, I think is really important. The good news about us kind of taking time to spend with our kids as they finish school this time of year, and I mean, Jake and I are just two dads. I mean, we're just trying to do the best that we can, and we both have jobs and kids, and so we can't always get together to talk about Genesis. But like, the good news is we're probably going to be back really fast with a couple of tracks from Wind and Withering. So
I imagine so. Yeah,
you had to wait for us to finish Trick of the Tail, but we're probably going to be back really quickly with what's coming next. But it all starts here. I mean, what comes next starts here. It starts with what we just heard. The powerhouse of Squonk, and just the confidence that Phil Collins had taken up the mantle, the songwriting, just kind of genius between Mike Rutherford and Tony Banks that's going to carry us through a number of albums, the significant contributions of Steve Hackett, and, you know, we're going to dip our toe in some of his key songwriting here as we get into the next album, you know, above and beyond what he contributed with Entangled here on Trick of the Tail. So the guys are just fine, and they're moving into the future in a compelling way, and we're here for it. So we hope you are too. I would love for you to hang out with us for a few more minutes, because I've got a surprise for Jake, and it is a video this time, and I'll show the video for anybody who watches our podcast on YouTube, which is like 3 people. But I will show the video.
Maybe a little motivation.
But Jake, I don't know if you followed this piece of I wouldn't be surprised if you did, and if this isn't a surprise at all. But I don't know if you followed this piece of Phil Collins' career, but as soon as he announced that he was leaving Genesis, kind of officially in the mid '90s, the first project he took on after that, before he started working for Disney and wrote the Tarzan soundtrack, was he created a big band.
Yes.
And he had the Phil Collins big band, and he had and Quincy Jones was the conductor of the Phil Collins big band, and he had some really big names on it. I think in his first tour in 1996, he had Tony Bennett as one of the very billable components of the big band. He didn't sing any of the songs. He kind of refused to. Like, he just really wanted to be behind the drum kit again. So we're going to take you now to I want to say 98 or 99. And we're going to show you the Phil Collins big band live in Paris. And the song that they're going to be performing should be pretty familiar. There's Phil Collins and I want to say Louis Conti, doing a drum solo together. There's Quincy Jones conducting the big band.
Oh, wow.
Daryl Shermer, of course, on guitar.
So the real question here is, who's the arranger for the Phil Collins big band?
That is a good question. I think I know the answer. I've got It's arranged by Harry Kim. Because
This right here gives me, like, old James Bond soundtrack vibes. Oh, it's not helping. Nice.
there was a middle section there that I cut.
Bill's a madman on the toms.
Here comes the flute section. Here we go. you as a saxophone player, I'm sure appreciate the sax solo here.
That's an old one. That's an old summer. What a great time. Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That was a real treat. I do remember this era of Phil Collins. He kind of dipped out for a little bit and was doing this. This is in the like kind of Harry Connick Jr. era, right? So there was a bit of a big band craze going on at this point, and would ultimately give way to the swing revival era of the late 90s. But Phil was kind of, in best you can tell, always a huge big band jazz fan, probably
Totally.
from youth. And
Totally.
this is a passion project. And you get that sense, right? He's gone out and he's just found every great, musician that sits in and does this kind of thing, and he's put them all together, and he's just having a hell of a time doing it. And I think that's super cool, right? What a great way to spend your retirement. I'm inspired.
Yeah,
Wait for the Jake Whitlow big band.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. And you will be on lead sax and probably lead guitar as well. So this has been really fun. Like I said, I think we're going to be back really soon with the next album. There's a lot to unpack with that one, but we sure unpacked a lot with Trick of the Tail. Have enjoyed doing this with you. I know you have too. We're having some audio issues and you can't totally hear me. So just give me a thumbs up and say bye.
All right, my brother.
Oh, you
Good
can
talking
hear.
to you.
He knew the cue. I love it. All right. See everybody. Like and follow, subscribe, all that shit.
Always a pleasure. Yeah. Now. Yeah, this is awesome.
Mild Mannered Supermen, Mild Mannered Supermen.